What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day. So the past 2 weeks, I'd say, have just been nothing but nonstop busy at work. So prepping for 4th of July weekend. Obviously, now I am recording on Wednesday, July 1st. That's when this episode will be airing, later tonight or early in the morning tomorrow, depending on my time constraint for today. But sorry, guys, I haven't posted the last 2 weeks. Just been very, very busy getting ready for the holiday weekend at retail at Sam's Club. It's just been nonstop. It's so busy. One of the busiest times of the year that we have. So I'm back. Don't worry. It'll be more consistent from here on out. You know, granted, everything goes according to my plan. But I am back. I apologize for not posting last week. We got a ton to talk about today, but again, before I start the show, I want to give all praise, all glory, and all honor to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the whole sole reason that I am here today and enjoying the life that He has blessed me with. I'm beyond blessed in my life, loving family, loving friends, my loving fiance, who I can't wait to marry next year. Counting down the days, it's less than a year away until we're married. I thank God, I praise my Lord and Savior every single day for the life that I have, and I encourage everybody to find the truth in Jesus Christ's gospel. It is life-saving, life-altering, life-changing, and the absolute truth in this reality that we live in. So, with that being said today, guys, we have a lot to talk about. Now, I know I'm usually a football and NFL and college football podcast, but today I just think it's too good to pass up. Obviously, my last episode 2 weeks ago was after the Knicks won their first NBA championship in close to 55 years. So today we're going to be talking about a little bit of more NBA. Now, some of this stuff you've already talked about. Now, I'm a little late to the party with some of this. Obviously, NBA free agency is in full swing. The draft is concluded in the NBA, and now it's just on to the offseason. But oh my, how many moves there have been of superstars just moving teams and moving to new places and new and possibly better horizons. So we're going to talk about the NBA offseason so far up to this point. And again, we'll dive in a little bit of NFL, a little bit of college football here and there towards the end back half of this episode. But today we're going to start off with stuff that has, just been immaculate in the NBA. And I think no better way to start than longtime Milwaukee Buck Giannis Antetokounmpo is no longer with the Milwaukee Bucks and instead will be with the Miami Heat. So, listen, the Heat over the past couple years, they've had their runs with Jimmy Butler, especially being the 8th seed that one year, making it all the way to the finals, only to, they ran into Nikola Jokic and his generational playoff run, who, again, the Nuggets aren't going anywhere, but I think the Heat are in win-now mode, and I believe that the Heat finished 12th in the East last year, 10th in the East, something like that. Not very good at all. So, some of the arguments is, you give up a haul for Giannis, someone who doesn't even shoot the three, someone who's inconsistent at the free throw line. Giannis is one of the 2 or 3, I'd say, best players in the NBA on any given night. I think that people are preparing just for the sheer factor of Victor Wembanyama continuously ascending as a superstar in this league. Now, granted, he just got bullied by the New York Knicks in the NBA Finals, but if you look at the front court on the Miami Heat now, Bam Adebayo and Giannis Antetokounmpo, now that's a front court that can take on Victor Wembanyama and give him problems. Now, there's not many people that can stop Victor Wembanyama, but on any given night, if he's, 100% full go, Giannis is one of those guys that can absolutely body up Victor Wembanyama or anybody in the league for that matter. Giannis widely looked at as one of the best big men in the league today, and I certainly believe that. And former NBA champion, former Finals MVP, former MVP. I do think that since Giannis has gotten traded to the Miami Heat, the Heat's odds to win the NBA championship just skyrocketed to 4th in the league, which I'd say that's relatively right. The Heat are going to, more than likely, the Heat will be a top 5, top 4 seed in the East next year. I love this move for Giannis. Milwaukee tried. I don't necessarily if they tried all they could do to keep Giannis, necessarily trying to surround him with talent. Obviously, the Damian Lillard, trade from years ago, that backfired and did not go as planned. I mean, you can't really fault that. I mean, Damian Lillard got hurt, injuries piled up, and, he was no longer the Damian Lillard that me, being a 26-year-old, and many of you who are around my age understand how dynamic and unreal Damian Lillard was. Even, our late teens to early 20s, and obviously to now, Dame will still be looked at as one of the best scorers, for, I'd say, his generation, So that unfortunately didn't work in Milwaukee, but I think this has been in the works for about 3 or 4 years at this point. Even after their NBA title run in 2021, after that, it was really like, what's next for Milwaukee? I know getting rid of Chris Middleton that 1 year didn't really necessarily, they needed to get Giannis at number 2. Chris Middleton, he was okay, but I'd say he's a number 3 on a championship caliber team. So, obviously, that's where the Dame Lillard situation comes in. That didn't materialize into anything, really, other than an early playoff exit. But then Giannis, no longer being with the Bucks. I mean, he loved Milwaukee, but everybody and their mother knew that, it was time to trade Giannis. It was time to restart. Milwaukee wasn't going anywhere with the current core that they had. It's time to cut their losses and, start fresh, start new. But Milwaukee got a championship out of it. Multiple MVPs from, I think he's a multiple MVP or one MVP from Giannis. But regardless, there has been no dynasties in the NBA over the past 10 years. I mean, 8 seasons, 8 different champions. I mean, it's just the new NBA right now. Like, we all thought that the Thunder were going to be the next dynasty. Well, now are you going to be able to keep Chet Holmgren? Do you even want to keep Chet Holmgren? Because he absolutely disappeared and got bodied by Victor Wembanyama in the playoffs. Now, Milwaukee, like, once they won their title against Phoenix, we all thought, okay, they're here to stay. Well, they haven't been back to the finals since winning that title in 2021. We got the Lakers, who won it in 2020, haven't been back since. So, 8 different champions over the past 8 seasons, that speaks for itself. There's no really... It is so difficult to, build a long-lasting contender. I'm pretty sure it's because of all the rules and regulations that there are with the luxury tax and just the salary system in general in the NBA. Again, you all know me. I'm more of a football, analyst. I'm more of a football expert than I am basketball. So I'm just giving my 2 cents on how I feel about the NBA, and I like the NBA a lot. I watched it a lot more back then, when Kobe Bryant, God rest his soul, was, still a member of the Lakers. Speaking of the Lakers, Giannis Antetokounmpo, no longer a Milwaukee Buck, and now a member of the Miami Heat. I think this will work out for Miami. They may not win the NBA championship, but, a couple playoff wins, a conference finals appearance, maybe an NBA finals appearance. I can definitely see that in the future. All I know is their front court is absolutely unreal between Bam and Giannis. That's going to be one of the best defensive fronts in the, front courts in the NBA. And I'm willing to believe that, the Heat's defense in general is going to improve dramatically. So points wasn't really the problem last year for the Heat. They just couldn't stop a nosebleed at all. So adding Giannis and Bam, that front court is going to be absolutely amazing. The defense is going to be unreal in Miami. So I think the Heat are on the up and up. And then for Milwaukee, it's time to cut your losses and just start fresh, and look to the future. So, and again, I mentioned the Lakers. Speaking of the Lakers, LeBron James will not be returning to the Los Angeles Lakers for the 26-27 NBA season, and instead is now a free agent, free to go wherever he wants. And as of recently, I do believe that LeBron is looking at every single team in the league on a suitable place of where he wants to go. But I think we all know the most likely candidate right now, I'd say there's the two most likely possibilities. The Golden State Warriors, which Draymond Green, they declined his fifth-year option. That does not necessarily mean Draymond will not be a part of the team in 2026-2027 season. Rather than that opens up cap space so you can afford guys like LeBron or possibly Anthony Davis if certain things line up. I think this is going to be an title run. My gut tells me that LeBron, possibly even Bronny. I don't know if Bronny's going to follow his father, but more than likely I believe that, hey, if I feel like LeBron's, one of his bargaining chips is, hey, if I'm coming here, you're bringing my son with me too. It's a 2-package deal. So, I think most teams in the NBA would be willing to do that. If even LeBron at his old age, he's still on any given night, depending on when he wants to really try or not, could be one of the most effective players in the NBA, defensively or offensively. But at this point, he can't carry a franchise like he has been over the past 20 years of his career. Anywhere he's went, he's carried the load, even though he had good teams around him the second time around in Cleveland and obviously in Miami, and the first 2 to 3 years in Los Angeles. Discount the first year because that Anthony Davis trade, what a wild trade that was. But LeBron James not coming back to the Lakers. It's Luka Doncic's team. Now, the Lakers just need to move forward. As a diehard Laker fan, have been for a long time, I still don't really have much hope for this team. I think it's mismanaged horribly. I don't think Rob Pelinka is good. The new ownership group, I believe, they bought out the Buss family. I do believe it's the same owner group as the Dodgers ownership group. So, and I know for a fact they want championships. They don't want no first round exits. They don't want none of that garbage. So, LeBron no longer a Los Angeles Laker. 3 places in mind that I think LeBron possibly could end up. Now, I know he's looking at everywhere in the league, which, no, he's not. There's no chance that he would go to, I don't think he would go to a Detroit, an Orlando, a Milwaukee, a New York. They don't really need him. 3 teams, I think, the Golden State Warriors, like I mentioned, the Miami Heat, and obviously the Cleveland Cavaliers for I'd say a final hurrah with the team that drafted him, obviously his hometown. But I'm more than likely willing to believe that LeBron, it could change from the time I'm recording this episode to the time it's posted, but my hunch tells me that LeBron is going to go join Steph Curry on the Warriors, kind of like the most title run ever. So you'll have Steph Curry, you'll have LeBron, you'll have Draymond Green on a discounted deal, and also it is rumored that they will go after Anthony Davis as well to bring him in. They did keep Kristaps Porzingis, so obviously they do have Jimmy Butler, but more than likely they're going to move off of Jimmy Butler. Injuries, his contract, they're not going to keep Jimmy Butler. But if you're looking at a starting lineup, LeBron, Curry, Anthony Davis, Kristaps Porzingis, it's not a bad, it's an old lineup. It's an status lineup, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad one. I would think the Warriors would probably be do I think they would win the NBA title? Maybe. I don't know. It's a little old for my taste if you're asking me when it comes to an NBA roster, but I definitely think they would be top 4 seed in the West. I do think you discount San Antonio, you discount the Oklahoma City Thunder. Who else really is there from the West that can, the Minnesota Timberwolves are another team to keep an eye on now. So I can easily see if LeBron joined Golden State, I think they can make a run at one final title for LeBron. By the way, that would only be LeBron's 5th title, and still, he's not better than Jordan. All right, 3 more NBA topics we're going to talk about. Kawhi Leonard, after 6 seasons with the LA Clippers, is going to the Toronto Raptors. Back to the Raptors. He played that one lone season in 2019 with the Toronto Raptors and won them an NBA championship. And then from there on out, he went to the Clippers, and it has been utter trash ever since he went to the Clippers. So, obviously, Kawhi Leonard started in San Antonio, made his way to Toronto, where he played one season in 2019 and won the NBA championship, surprisingly. But everybody and their mother believes that if Klay Thompson doesn't get hurt, and obviously if Kevin Durant was available, if he never tore his Achilles, Golden State would have won that championship fairly easily. So, but that's still a legit title, regardless. So Kawhi Leonard heading from the Clippers back to Toronto. I think, that move, I like that move for Toronto. I don't really have any negative thing to say about it. But my biggest concern with Kawhi Leonard is the fact that he is always injured. In an 82-game season, I'm pretty sure Kawhi Leonard only averages 40 games a year. I think it's over the past 5 years or something like that. But because of load management, injuries, Kawhi Leonard is not what he used to be, of course. We all know this. But does it make Toronto better? I think it does. I think Toronto could. Let's say Kawhi Leonard stays completely healthy. I always look at things, barring any injury, anything unfortunate like that, because you can never predict those. But if Kawhi stays healthy, if that Raptors team is completely healthy, I'd say they can make a title run, sort of a swan song sort of way for Kawhi Leonard to finish his career with his last, title victory. Sorry, guys, it's so hot in here. I apologize if you hear the fan going in the background, but it is just scorching hot in this room and outside. I'm pretty sure it's like 94 degrees today, but I thought that was very fascinating. This one kind of caught me off guard. Again, nothing catches me off guard anymore as the Luka and AD trade from 2 years ago. That was ridiculous to this day, but I will say that the Kawhi Leonard to Toronto definitely caught me off guard a little bit. Barring any injury, keeping, the whole team healthy, I definitely think Toronto can make some noise in the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference is widely looked at as the inferior conference, but again, the Knicks just won the title. So, are the Knicks going to be able to run it back? I don't know. We're going to talk about two more. LaMelo Ball leaving Charlotte, getting traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Julius Randle no longer on the Timberwolves. So this backcourt for the Timberwolves is going to be scary. Again, barring any injury, because LaMelo has had a lot of them, but he's a star. LaMelo Ball is a star when he is available, when he is playing, when he is healthy. He's a star. Again, Charlotte's like one of the most... They're weirdly run. I don't like Charlotte whatsoever, but I definitely think this makes Minnesota better. I feel like that the Timberwolves want to do like a lot of spacing, get the best three-point shot, let their athletes take over. Julius Randle, while a solid player, he clogs up the lane and he just absolutely gets in the way, I feel like. Anthony Edwards is a finisher. He's not necessarily the best, the greatest shooter in the world, but he's a finisher. He's great at attacking the rim. He has a good jump shot. He has a good three-point shot, but I think you're bringing in LaMelo to be that three-point specialist, to be that shooter that you desperately need, and also a point guard that is very good at distributing the basketball. So I think this works out for Minnesota. Now, again, barring injury, health concerns, anything like that, it's so important that LaMelo stays healthy for this team. If, again, all things considered, if Minnesota is healthy, I think Minnesota can make some noise in the West. They can very well go on a run. Absolutely they can. And Edwards is a star. I think LaMelo is a star. So I think it works out for Minnesota. I don't really dislike any of the moves that have been made in the NBA up to this point for this. One questionable one is the last one. Ja Morant, the longtime Memphis Grizzly, heading to the Trailblazers. And now I believe there are talks that Damian Lillard and Ja Morant will both start. Two ball-centric guards who need the ball in their hands to, create offense. Yeah, not quite the same, but I do remember Braun being ball dominant with Luka Doncic being ball dominant. The guys need the ball in their hands. That don't really mesh too well. You need people who are good at spacing the floor and are comfortable playing off ball, or that are comfortable not having the ball in their hands. So having a hyper-athletic point guard in Ja Morant which he had such promise in Memphis early on, but again, he's a head case. We all know the situation with him flashing his firearm on social media. I mean, that's what I don't understand about pro athletes sometimes. It's like you're getting paid all this money, but I guess that it does matter your inner circle. It does matter. It does matter who you hang out with. I mean, it shows. But LaMelo, Ja Morant, as much as I don't mind this move for the Trailblazers, you got an old Dame Lillard, okay at times Ja Morant, still very athletic point guard, good at finishing at the rim. Not necessarily the greatest jump shooter, but that's what you got Dame for. Trailblazers, I think they can make the play-in game at most. I don't see them doing much else other than that, but I do think it's a fascinating duo with Dame Lillard and Ja Morant. I do think it's fascinating, but again, I'm not necessarily worried about health. Damian Lillard, I'm worried about health. Ja Morant, I'm worried about his head, like where his headspace is, and if he's going to act like an idiot on social media and get himself suspended again for like the 50 millionth time. Like, can it work out? Yes. But absolutely everything has to go 100% right for the Portland Trailblazers. So, that's the NBA free agency, and, I don't really dive too much into the NBA draft because I don't really keep up much with college basketball other than the March Madness tournament. But, hey, Jai Lucas in Miami, pay attention to them. I bet you they're going to win a national title eventually. I think Jai Lucas can bring Miami's first national championship in college basketball. I think he's more than capable of doing it. All right, so we're going to transfer into college football, and this is kind of college football, kind of NFL, and kind of Canadian football all wrapped into one. And, of course, it has to do with Brendan Sorsby, the quarterback from Texas Tech, who I've talked about explicitly over these past couple weeks and the past month. Obviously, everybody knows the gambling situation. Well, the NFL declined his, application to be a part of the 2026 supplemental draft in the NFL. So he ends up trying to go back to Texas Tech. Originally, he was going back to Texas Tech, but due to absolute outrage by a lot of people. Now, again, I have been on the record saying that I don't really care that he was gambling, but I absolutely support the position of everybody else. I 100% support their stance on the matter. The kiss of death in college athletics and college sports in general for athletes has always been gambling. So it's kind of like this. It's frowned upon. There's a reason you don't do it. And if you do it, you don't do it on the sport you're playing. It'd be different if he was betting on NBA, MLB, NFL. It's not his own team, and it's not his own sport. I mean, it's football, but college athletics is completely different from the NFL. So Brendan Sorsby is also got declined by the Canadian Football League to join, I believe it was either their draft or a team in their league. So unfortunately, Brendan Sorsby's last option is to just hold out until the 2027 NFL draft, which, is he talented enough? Yes, absolutely. Do I think someone will draft him? Yes, but I think he desperately needed a 2026 season with Texas Tech, especially because he made such great strides at Cincinnati. Even though Cincinnati wasn't the greatest, you can see the flash of great play from Sorsby when he was there. I think he desperately needed this year at Texas Tech, but unfortunately, he will not get that chance, and he's going to be looked at based off his 2025 Cincinnati film. That's how teams, GMs, coaches are going to judge him for the 2027 NFL draft. So all he can do now, grind, hit the weight room, practice as much as he can, get with, former players or NFL players, throw around and, give himself an opportunity to have people see him just throw the football, maybe hone in a couple of his skills, accuracy, position, footwork. This is the only thing that Brendan Sorsby has left to do. Excuse me. But again, I feel bad, but at the same time, he did it to himself. Thousands of bets. Thousands. Not just a couple, not a couple hundred, a couple thousand. Now, he's in rehab. I hope he gets well. You know, gambling is an addiction. There has been addictive personalities, you know, in all sorts of things. Drugs, alcohol, money, gambling. Like, there's serious addictions. And I hope he desperately gets the help that he needs. He does need help. Thousands of bets. It's crazy. But it's an unfortunate reality for Brendan Sorsby. He will be without football for almost 2 years before the 2027 NFL draft. And at that point, do we really think that anybody's going to pick him up? I do not know. Do I hope he gets picked up? Yes. I hope someone gives him a chance. The Ravens gave Diego Pavia a chance after him acting like a fool during the Heisman ceremony, during the offseason. You know, if someone's going to give that head case a chance, you know, basically a worse version of Johnny Manziel, I'm pretty sure Brendan Sorsby will get his shot, but it's up to him. He's got to put in the work like no one else over these next, about a year and a half until the next NFL draft. All right, now, one final thing before we head out today. I'm going to talk about the week in college football that is going to have the biggest sway to the college football playoff, the biggest impact of the season. And that week is week 10, from November 1st to November 7th. Saturday, November 7th, we have a plethora of games that will have massive conference influence, conference championship influence, bowl games, the college football playoff. All of it, I'm willing to believe, comes back down to week 10. Stuff that happens in week 10 will directly affect everything that's going to happen on Selection Sunday. So some of the notable matchups. We got Oklahoma going to Gainesville to take on Florida. What's Oklahoma like this year? John Mateer's been putting in a lot of work, and Oklahoma might be primed and ready for another college football playoff run, obviously falling to the hands of Alabama after holding an early lead. But John Sumrall in his first year as the Florida head coach, how is it going to translate on the football field? Is it going to translate to wins? Is it not? I don't know. I believe it's too early to tell exactly how well John Sumrall is going to do in Florida, but I definitely say he's an upgrade of a coach over Billy Napier. So I definitely think Oklahoma and Florida could possibly have SEC title game influence and college football playoff influence. Alabama at LSU. Kalen DeBoer against Lane Kiffin. How has Lane Kiffin's season turned out? I don't know. We won't know until we're nearly there to college football. It's July now. Next month, end of next month, we got football. It is back next month. At this point in time, is Kalen DeBoer still on the hot seat? I think everybody in Bama Nation and Tuscaloosa wants Kalen DeBoer absolutely sacked and out. Depending on what he does this year, more than likely, I don't think they'll fire him, but he'll be on the hot seat where he has permanent third-degree burns on his bum, that's for sure. So, Alabama at LSU. Again, SEC title influence right there. College football playoff implications for sure, because Alabama also plays Georgia. Alabama also, they play them early in the season. LSU could be very well on their way to a college football playoff berth. But again, Bama, LSU, legendary matchup. That's going to decide a lot. Georgia taking on Ole Miss. Rematch of the Sugar Bowl from the college football playoff quarterfinal game a year ago. How's Gunnar Stockton and Georgia look? Do they have a consistent run game at this point? Do they have better wide receiver play? A pass rush? We don't know. But more than likely, it's Georgia. They're going to be okay. Ole Miss. How is Pete Golding's first true regular season under how is that going for him? Trinidad Chambliss, he's won his appeal. He'll be playing college football this year. Solid run game with Keywan Lacey. Ole Miss, I don't necessarily know. I think they'll regress this year just because I think there is a fall off. As much as Pete Golding deserves his credit for how he rallied Ole Miss during their playoff run and nearly making a national title game, I definitely think Lane Kiffin is an upgrade from Pete Golding. So, unfortunately, I don't see Ole Miss making the playoff this year. But again, Georgia-Ole Miss, fascinating rematch from last year's college football quarterfinal game in the Sugar Bowl. But again, that has SEC implications, college football playoff implications. Texas at Missouri, that's a solid game, especially depending on how Ahmad Hardy and that Missouri run game looks. Texas A&M at South Carolina. We got what they call the Holy Ward, Brigham Young at Utah. Big 12 implications. Utah looked widely as, a possible contender in the Big 12. I believe they have the third best odds. BYU has the second best odds to win it behind Texas Tech. But how is Texas Tech going to be this year? We don't know. Another year for Bear Bachmeier under center. That's going to influence the college football playoff. West Virginia, Texas Tech. We got Michigan State at Michigan. I forget the coach for Michigan State now, but he's the guy from Northwestern. I'm willing to bet Michigan State can possibly double their win total from last year. I mean, they only won 3 games last year. It's an unfortunate turnaround. So, Kyle Whittingham, new head coach for Michigan. How are they up to this point? Could this game possibly have Big Ten championship implications? More than likely for Michigan. They better hope they win, because then they'll have to play Ohio State later on. But if Michigan wants, to be back in a way, yeah, this is an important game, absolutely. It's against your most hated rival. Well, second most hated rival. Obviously, nothing takes that Ohio State game, but that's a game to not shy away from. Oregon at Ohio State. Rematch from 2 years ago when Ohio State absolutely beat the brakes off of Oregon in the Rose Bowl. Ohio State went on their way to win the national title that year, but Oregon and Ohio State, up to this point, these two teams very well could be undefeated at this point in time. Winner might have the inside track to make the Big Ten title game. Winner might have the inside track to get the number 1 seed in the college football playoff. We don't know yet, but I am really excited for that game, because that has some of the highest stakes you could ever ask for in a college football game. Oregon, Ohio State, 2 legendary programs going at it. Possible Big Ten championship game, appearance on the line. College football playoff appearance, and seeding purposes on the line. Absolutely, that's an important game. But then we got the most important game, and probably, arguably, the most anticipated game of the year. Miami traveling to South Bend, Indiana to take on Notre Dame. There is no doubt there is still bitterness and a sour taste left in Notre Dame's mouths from last year's Selection Sunday. Getting flipped with Miami the very last week on Selection Sunday, despite the teams not playing a single game during Conference Championship weekend, which, if the ACC had better tie-breaking rules, Miami would have been in the ACC title game against Virginia. They would have beat the brakes off of them. Absolutely no doubt in my mind about that. And Notre Dame would have been in the playoff over JMU. So, I keep saying this. If the ACC had better tie-breaking rules and, not having to go to the 5th, option to figure that out, Notre Dame would have been in the playoff regardless. So, really, the ACC screwed over Notre Dame. It's not necessarily the committee. It's the ACC's fault. But at the same time, Notre Dame lost both of their big games that they had on their schedule. They played absolute cupcakes the rest of the way. Now, this season's no different. The toughest games Notre Dame will play, Miami, BYU, and SMU. SMU is still a solid game, solid team to look for. Rhett Lashley has done unbelievably great at his time at SMU. Since leaving Miami's offensive coordinating position a couple years ago, he has SMU rolling in a good position. Obviously made the college football playoff in the first year of its inception with SMU, the 12-team playoff, sorry. But when you look at this game, Notre Dame does not have the backstop that Miami has. Let's say Miami drops this game in Indiana, which it's a coin flip. Notre Dame's looked at as the preseason number 1 team in America. Miami, top 5, top 7 team in America right now, at least preseason-wise. But it's very possible that both these teams will be undefeated up at this point in the season. Now, it's more imperative for Notre Dame to win this game because you don't want, if you're Notre Dame, not being in a conference, and I respect the independence from Notre Dame, I do, because they get all the capital, they don't have to share with anyone. They do not have the backstop of the ACC championship game like Miami does. If Miami were to drop this game, they have the ACC championship game to where they can usher themselves into the college football playoff. Notre Dame does not have that. So, hypothetically, let's say BYU beats Notre Dame earlier, I think it's 2 weeks earlier before this game. Well, if you're Notre Dame, it is a must win right then and there. If they don't win and they beat SMU, they're at 10-2 again. And who's to say that they would get a nod again over another 10-2 SEC or Big Ten team? Now, granted, with the agreement that they signed, Notre Dame would, if they're inside the top 12, they're guaranteed a spot, which we know this. I think it's trash. I think it's lazy. I think they just overreacted a lot to what happened last year. But regardless, Miami game in South Bend is do or die for Notre Dame, especially if they drop it to BYU early in the season. And at that point, Notre Dame wouldn't be so high ranked because let's say they're at number 1 in the poll and they lose to BYU 2 weeks before the Miami game. More than likely, they'll drop 3-4 spots. So they'll come into the game 5th. Maybe Miami's undefeated and they're like 3rd. If Notre Dame loses again, more than likely that can drop them out of the top 12. And at that point, who's to say that other teams behind them wouldn't jump Notre Dame based off the rest of the schedule? I mean, I listed off tons of games. Ohio State, Oregon, maybe those teams will be in front of them. Michigan, maybe they're playing for it. Clemson, for all I know, they could be back. Oklahoma State is a team to keep your eye on. Dark horse, Big 12 title contender, and college football playoff berth. I'm calling it. Oklahoma State is my dark horse candidate to possibly make the college football playoff and possibly win the Big 12. But all these teams, Oklahoma, Florida, Bama, LSU, Georgia, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, BYU, Utah, Houston is a team to keep your eye on. Michigan, Iowa even, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State maybe. Tulane, who knows how they are in the group of 5. Miami, there is zero margin for error for Notre Dame this year because I think the talent pool is so much bigger in college football this year, and their schedule is a little bit more workable this year for Notre Dame, but they got 3 bigger games this year that probably are equal to the 2 big games they had last year. If they drop 2 of these games on their schedule this year, I would not be surprised one bit if Notre Dame gets left out of the playoff again. And that's going to wrap it up this week on The Lake Show, everyone. I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I'm your host, Dominic Lakeo. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want, and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted.